Good afternoon, everybody, and delighted for you to join me in our final webinar of the year, in which I will be predicting my 2023 trends for the hotel sector next year. I'm your host for today. I'm Eloise Hanson. I'm the editor of Boutique Hotel News. We are a global multimedia platform for boutique, lifestyle, and luxury hotels. So last week, we held an in-person trends event for our nearest and dearest, our clients and our partners, in which the editorial team at IHM revealed just two of our predicted trends for next year. In today's session, I'm going to be talking you through the full six. And here to support me on the day, we have Tara Colpitts, Adir Ron, and Chris Graham. Now, I'm going to invite each of my speakers today to introduce themselves when we get round to their specific trend. And we'll be holding a short Q&A for our audience members to learn a bit more. But to take you through some webinar guidelines, this is going to be around a 45-minute discussion, and we will take some time at the end to take any questions from the floor. So if you do have any questions or any thoughts or observations, perhaps you even disagree with one of my trends for today, then please pop these into the chat or use the Q&A function, and I will get round to these at the end. And just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and it will be sent out to everybody that has registered within a few days' time. So let's talk about my trends for 2023. And the first on the list is hotel e-tail. This has really come about with inflation that is now on the rise, and consumers are likely to be more mindful when it comes to spending their money. And we have seen that pent-up demand and revenge travel has helped major cities recover post-COVID, which has resulted in really strong and resilient ADRs. And some research from HVS shows that over the past 50 years, daily rates across London hotels have grown 0.75% on average above inflation per year. This means that during periods of high consumer price growth, I should say, hotels have been able to raise room rates and pass these rising costs on to guests. So whilst the desire to travel is strong, spending habits could be influenced by inflation concerns, and this could lead to increased time spent researching where you want to go and what you want to do. Now, we've seen platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok all rolling out e-commerce strategies, and these include things like live shopping, products, tags, and links to make that shopping experience simple and convenient. And to take TikTok, where 45% of users want to see more hotel-related content to inspire their next trip, TikTok is allegedly chasing Amazon with plans to build e-commerce distribution centers in the US. And someday, we might find that users will be able to actually book a hotel stay directly through the platform and even buy hotel-related items advertised in video content. If you can't wait till then, there have been dedicated e-commerce platforms for hotels and resorts which have launched earlier this year, such as Libby, which stands for Love It, Buy It. And through corresponding QR codes, guests can actually scan and purchase items found on property to be delivered to their personal home address. And co-founder Suzanne Mahoney explains, opportunities to experience physical products are shrinking as shopping moves online, but the hospitality industry offers huge potential for brands to tell their stories and reach their consumers. It's the ultimate try before you buy model. And Mark Saunders, who's the director of marketing at Splendid Hospitality, also believes there is opportunity to drive revenue by activating hotel spaces with retail partnerships. He says, consumers with less disposable income will demand more for less, and this will gather pace, particularly regarding the experience trend within hospitality. As a result, hotels will maximize partnerships with retailers and become more multifaceted in their approach. And a recent Knight Frank report supports this idea. The report reveals that ancillary revenues have increased in 2022, with the contribution to total revenue rising by 1.5 percentage points. And Philippa Goldstein, who's the senior analyst of hotels and leisure at Knight Frank, writes, the uplift in revenue generated from the rental of space and concessions has been the overriding contributing factor to this growth. And I think deploying the right technology is going to be so important for a robust e-commerce strategy. And Simon Bullingham, who's the CEO of Journey Hospitality, argues that consideration needs to be given to such things as an open API booking engine, AI-powered promotional messaging, and shoppable content via VR and 360 tours. In his words, hotels need to be more like Selfridges, and he says, the last 2 years proved that by seizing the opportunity to broaden and differentiate offerings, hotels can reap commercial benefits, and those learnings can be implemented through retailing technology. Hoteliers can tap into wider societal trends and innovation, extend hospitality service culture into the digital realm, and bolster revenue by driving sales across all aspects of a hotel's products and services. This trend, Hotel E-tail, links very nicely into my next one. Second on the list here, we have CRM Spotlight. And to talk about this in greater detail, please let me hand over to Adir Ron. How are you doing, Adir?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So why don't you introduce yourself for our audience today?
Sure. So my name is Adir Ron. I'm Chief Marketing Officer at Duve. Duve is a personalized end-to-end guest management platform. So basically, we cover the entire guest journey from pre-check-in to post-checkout, helping hoteliers basically generate more revenue, cut down operational overhead, and increase guest satisfaction while doing that.
Thanks, Adir. So my first question to you today, why is now the right time for hoteliers to be investing in their customer relationship strategy?
So that's a great question. And I think you mentioned it before, I think 2021, 2022, we started seeing, a slow return to norm, an uptick in what was dubbed revenge tourism. But then what we're starting to see, starting with the war in Ukraine, we're starting to see, prices go back up. Flights are becoming more expensive. We're starting to see a lot of signs of slowness in the economy. People are thinking a bit more before they hop onto their next revenge vacation. And with that in mind, I think that as hoteliers, as hospitality experts, we have to think about how can we actually make an impact on our guests. As once people actually get to a point where they decide, okay, I'm ready and willing to pay the price for a vacation, to take that flight, to book that hotel, then I want to make sure that I'm getting a quote unquote a bang for my buck. And I want to make sure that I'm enjoying my vacation to the fullest. And I want to make sure that I'm getting the best treatment possible, and that the hotel that I'm staying at is really thinking about me and what I want and what I need, sometimes even before I can think about it myself. So I think that investing in a really good CS strategy or CRM or customer relationship in general, and being able to really understand who your guest is, what they are interested in, and being able to provide it to them is, before everything else, to be honest, a marketing strategy. If I want to make sure that, that my brand surfaces above everything else, then I need to make sure that I'm providing a stellar experience, and that my guests are happy and become my ambassadors. And that happens when I am able to deliver above and beyond on everything that's customer facing, basically.
Building on what you've just said there, Adir, about wanting to better understand customers, perhaps even before they know what they might want and need, do you have any data or insights about what customers are valuing throughout that customer journey, pre, during, and post trip?
Sure. So I think, let me, if I may, just share a short anecdote, because I think that really highlights the difference. So a couple of months ago, I was traveling to Spain for a conference. I was staying at a really nice hotel, really enjoyed it. And in one of the days, I noticed that there's a little flyer stamped in the elevator, and it basically announced that there's going to be a fire drill later today. Don't be worried about the alarms and about the fuss. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's on fire. It's just a citywide fire drill. And the way to communicate it to guests was by hanging a flyer on the elevator. And if I was a bit busier, I wouldn't have noticed it. I might have freaked out, hearing sirens in the middle of the day, specifically on the day off from the conference when I was about to enjoy a relaxed stay at the hotel and explore the city a bit. And instead of understanding that this is a bad way to communicate, maybe I should email the guests, send them an SMS, send them a WhatsApp or an iMessage or a push notification if they have an app. So for me, that was a very strong disconnect between a really good hotel experience that I was getting and understanding my need as a customer or my favorite method of connection or communication. So I think that's a perfect example of, for myself, of the way that I want to be notified about things. But back to your question, I think that it's first and foremost, it's about the personal touch. It's about fast response. People don't want to wait. We are very impatient these days. I can say that about myself, and I think most people can relate. We don't have time to wait for our computers to load or for our phones to restart. So we definitely don't want to wait for the hotel staff to get back to us with questions. We want immediate responses. We want it to be personal, not just hello, first name, but we want guests want the hotel staff to understand and know who they are, to understand that one size fit all doesn't work anymore, and different guests require different things during their pre, post, and during their stay. And I think it's really about being able to provide value, especially during stay. So again, if I kind of go back, so pre-stay, I think it's fast response. It's not waiting in lines. It's getting immediate actions and immediate answers to any question that I have. I think post-stay is really about, again, a fast checkout, not waiting in line, being able to really see a detailed breakdown of what am I paying for and being able to pay for it immediately and just leave, or having the option to opt in to get further communications and get discounts, but it must be opt-in and not mandatory. I don't want to be spammed. And during stay, I think it's really about value add. And that means providing each guest, or in general, providing guests value and recommendations and concierge services that are relevant to who they are and what they care about. So if I'm a family traveling with small kids, I probably don't care about nightlife or bars. If I'm on a business trip, I don't want to be notified about kid activities. And there's many more examples, but I think it's about providing relevant value add and not just trying to upsell. Again, going back to e-tail. So it's before you sell something, you got to provide value.
On that note about personalization and making sure that what it is that you are offering is entirely customized, where are those opportunities then for hotels to actually stand out and generate that strong return on investment through personalization?
So that's a perfect question, because that's something that I strongly believe in, and to be honest, that's exactly what Duve is built upon. So every interaction is basically an opportunity to upsell in a smart way, as long as we're keeping that personalization in mind. So pre-check-in, understanding, for example, from that personalization prism or perspective, understanding, when my guest is arriving, in relation to what time the room is clearing up for check-in. So if I am able to offer that room early on, if my guests are arriving at 6 a.m., I can offer them an upsell for an early check-in. Jumping back to checkout, if their flight out of London is at midnight and they have to clear the room by 12 noon, I can offer them an option for a late checkout as long as the room can be vacated later. And if it can't, or if they don't want it, I can still offer them an upsell of luggage storage, for example. During their stay, I can offer any relevant upsell basically that's tailored for who they are. So again, for example, if it's a romantic getaway, I can offer them a breakfast in bed, or I can offer them in-room in-room activities, in-room amenities. So a bottle of wine, champagne, a box of chocolates. I can offer spa packages at a discount. So there's a lot of different experiences that I can offer once I understand that personal touch, and once I understand that the guest persona. But interesting enough, if we kind of turn it around, I think that from a hotelier perspective, this is also a really strong opportunity to create an exceptional impression. So, going back to that first question that you asked me, about why now is the right time. And I talked about personalization as a marketing strategy. So once we are able to deliver a strong personal experience that really relates and connects with the guest and understand the guest needs, we're creating an exceptional impression. We are increasing the guest return rate. We are increasing the chance of guests coming back and booking directly and not through an OTA. So our margins are bigger. We're increasing the chance of the guest spreading positive word of mouth. We're increasing the chance that the guest leaves a positive review, which helps us generate additional incoming traffic on OTAs and on our brand website. And furthermore, if we're doing all of this in a smart way with a smart tool, then we're also able to do all of this with less staff. All in all, any way you turn it around, increasing our margins, increasing our profits, and just making a better experience while making more money.
Thanks, Adir. Thank you so much for your insights. And in fact, several things that you've talked about in your answers there are going to feed into my next trend, which is one all about hyper-localization. And there is acute pressure at the moment from hoteliers, brought about by various social, political, and economic factors, prompting hoteliers to rely on their local market. And Simon Mahon, who's the general manager at the Grand York, summarizes this. He says, "I don't think the full power and damage of Brexit has materialized. Not only has the cost of supplies gone through the roof, but delivery times have extended drastically. Orders can be unpredictable and capital items are getting stuck at customs. And then there's highly talented people who want to work in the UK and they can't enter the country. It's detrimental to our industry." And as Adir alluded to earlier, Russia's invasion of Ukraine earlier this year has had a major impact on travel and hospitality. As an example, Mahon notes that the annual electricity bill at the Grand York has increased from £400,000 to over £1 million. And these rising costs are happening at the same time when hoteliers are raising wages in an effort to attract new staff to the sector. According to a survey from CGA by Nielsen IQ and Forth, 1 in 9 hospitality jobs, which is around 11%, remain vacant, which has come down from a peak vacancy rate of 15% at the height of the pandemic. And I know some hoteliers, anecdotally, are recruiting overseas talent outside of Europe to help replenish staffing levels. And others are also now relying, more to my point, on local pop-up schools, such as Syra Hospitality, to source and train employees. If you're unfamiliar with Syra, they're a non-profit organization which partners with multiple hotel brands in a given market and teaches a 2-month curriculum combining brand standards alongside broader hospitality skills. They launched in London earlier this year in May, and as demand has been so strong that they've actually held 2 graduations since they've come over here into the UK. And so we've got the rising cost of labour, rising cost of materials, rising cost of ingredients. It's placing the supply chain under increased pressure. And on your screens here, you can see a podcast that I recently recorded with Yotel's VP of Technical Services, Mark Henderson. And he mentioned how the company is working with local partners and owners to find altogether different supply chains. He says, in the last 2 to 3 years, there's a trend for reliability and locally sourced. It's not only the right thing to do from a sustainable approach, but it's also the right thing to do for investors in terms of money, time, and for the betterment of the project. It might be more expensive to source locally, but it would mean the program is less susceptible to being jeopardized by shipping times and costs are less likely to fluctuate. And there are some hotel brands, I could name like the Pig or the Hoxton, which have built a very distinct brand identity by way of local partnerships. And these partnerships is what helped businesses during various lockdowns when alternative revenues had to be sought, and these businesses were able to serve their surrounding neighborhoods. It kept brands at the fore of consumers' minds, and consumers are now looking for travel experience totally rooted in local cultures. Hilton's 2023 Trends Report, which is based on a global survey of more than 7,000 travelers, reveals that 49% of respondents are looking to be immersed in local cultures and products while traveling next year. I expect we'll see loyalty programs being reimagined in line with this trend, and for brand activation companies such as Way to quickly scale. And Way launched in 2020, I believe, and the company has just raised $20 million in Series A funding at a valuation of $100 million. And as hoteliers look to differentiate and stand out, again, to a point that Adir made earlier, greater attention is going to be paid to one's competitive set. Considering Deloitte earlier this year at their European conference, Deloitte mentioned that they've recorded double-digit growth in local markets as a result of hybrid working. So now there's almost a further opportunity here to attract footfall. And if you're interested to hear how hybrid working might shape 2023, I would certainly recommend signing up to my colleague's webinar this Wednesday at 2:00. That's for Under Urban Living News, and it will be hosted by George Sell. And we've seen that hoteliers have pivoted to include co-working facilities, but it feels like the challenge sits within food and beverage, and F&B is going to need to evolve. And Dan Rose Bristow, who's the owner of the Torridon, explains why. He says, despite the supply chain challenges, hotels will still be expected to provide a good F&B service that includes nutritional and sustainable adaptations. Working with local farms, developing your own kitchen garden, and working with local growers and local fishermen will all become more attractive to navigate the supply chain. And to some degree, this also fits in with my next trend, one in which I'm going to be bringing Tara into the conversation here, which is all about TV-inspired travel. So Tara, before we get started, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, happy to. I'm Tara Colpitts and happy to be here. I'm Senior Director for our market management team at Expedia Group, based here in London, snowy London, which I don't generally say. But my team at Expedia Group actually looks after the relationships with all of our lodging partners. And so a really exciting area to be in.
Thank you, Tara. So my first question coming your way, what do recent booking patterns suggest about sources of travel inspiration?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's very fair to say when we look at some of the fictional shows like White Lotus, or there's one that I got really caught up into, as my husband would say, called From Scratch, that is set in beautiful, stunning locations worldwide. That, you know, it really does have the power to inspire that very rich content. And the settings in those cases themselves are characters. The traveler wants to experience it. They want to smell it. They want to taste it. And whether they're adventure seekers or history buffs or foodies, they're going to walk away somewhat inspired. And we actually, research from our No Normal report that we recently ran actually confirms that 44% of people really said that the top source of their inspiration for their next travel is TV or streaming means. And that actually supersedes social media, which is at 15%. And here in the UK, 46% of travelers are actually considering visiting a destination after seeing it on a show or a movie. I know, as I said, From Scratch is set in beautiful Sicily. I said to my husband, we really need to go back to Sicily after watching it and maybe walking away a bit hungry as well. But 36% of people have actually already booked trips to destinations after seeing them in some of these different forums. And when you consider that 78% of people say they have made a travel choice based on ads they feel that they're represented by through messaging and visuals, and 84% actually for millennials, then it's not just the locations and the locales that matter, but also the people, the actual characters that you put in place within those means. Some of the top destinations that we're seeing are New Zealand for the numerous fantasy epic locations that it's featured within. UK, Paris, New York City are kind of the mainstays. And then beaches of Hawaii, I would say, particularly on a day like today.
Mm-hmm. Funny you mentioned Paris. I received an email this morning. I believe Emily in Paris season 3 is either launching. It's either next week or next month, but I think
it's next week. I've got it in my calendar. Yes.
Yeah, and these stories that have come across my desk today have been the best hotels to stay in Paris, or it might be the top 10 Instagram worthy places that you need to visit in Paris. So you can see how marketing strategies are starting to play off what we're seeing online, which leads me very nicely into my next question here, Tara. So how might popular TV shows on Netflix and Amazon Prime help to influence digital marketing strategies?
Well, like I said, it really does open up some interesting possibilities from a content standpoint when you look at different streaming services. And as part of that, there might be key moments within the year where it really makes sense to leverage different campaigns that are in place or surrounding some of these more talked about mediums. As we think about the traveler journey as an industry, then everything that is involved in the traveler's pre-trip decision, whether it's recognizable or not, maybe they've sat down and unknowingly watched something and it has influenced where they are leaning towards as far as that location. It really is important for us as an industry to make use of that to persuade the traveler to take that trip. And I think as TVs are sources of inspiration for potential travelers, it becomes just an additional connection point for us to make leverage of. A few examples of how we at Expedia Group have made use of these moments with travelers. There's a show called Next Turn, for example, and it takes kind of like the Amazing Race concept, but it takes people through different locations in the US and the UK. When you think of vacation rentals, so we've highlighted different vacation rentals and feature films. We have different activity providers and partners who have curated foodie tours or film location tours. And then our media solutions team has actually partnered to actually promote different film locations as well as some really strong partners such as Abu Dhabi.
And on that point, around the tours, be it food or media locations, do you think that popular TV shows will have an influence on that wider travel ecosystem? And an example that I could give is that will we see a greater reliance on people such as travel agents and tour operators? What impact will this start to have on how we distribute hotel rooms, stays, and experiences?
Yeah, I think when we look at the broader 2023 travel trends, so we actually have our traveler value index that we run on a frequent basis for Expedia Group, and it really indicates that the importance of understanding the gap between the industry expectations and the traveler values is so critical. And Adir actually mentioned it as far as really understanding that personal experience. The expectations of our traveler are high. They have been kept away from the opportunity to explore for some time now. And so it really can accelerate your revenue and opportunity and growth for those that are savvy industry professionals. So for example, 70% of people say they're more likely to choose travel options that are more inclusive, even at a higher cost. So 3/4 of people would choose a destination that are committed to supporting local community and cultures, even if it comes at an additional cost. And so I think, you know, most definitely coming through the pandemic, there's a very discerning consumer out there with those high expectations, and they want to make sure that the variety of factors that are taken into consideration really do align with their value set. Right now, price and flexibility are seen as the most top of mind factors within this. Now, price doesn't necessarily mean the cheapest option. They want to make sure that they're getting their money's worth. But I think those are important things to really take into consideration as an industry. But I think also Adir noted before, as far as those new experiences, and also understanding that people are really looking to push themselves out of their comfort zone. Actually, 34% of our survey respondents said that they want to be pushed out of their comfort zone. And not so surprisingly, after the past couple of years, nearly 1/4 said that they want to meet new people. That's not to say that they're tired of the old ones. It just means that they want to be able to expand their reach and get to know new people. So I really think it's safe to say that TV offers inspiration, and that the entire travel ecosystem has a role to play within that, and making sure that people have a true travel experience that they will want to go back to time and again.
Thanks, Tara. Thanks so much for your time there. Again, we could almost bridge to a degree what we've just talked about, this idea that once upon a time we were sat in an armchair or in front of our sofa watching TV, or perhaps on a little tour on YouTube of places that we would like to go and visit. My next trend is looking at digital twins. This was something that seemed quite popular on LinkedIn when I flagged that we held our in-person trends event last week. Now, a digital twin is quite literally a digital representation or replica of an object or a system, and it is typically powered by virtual reality. And similar technology is already being used by platforms such as Cvent. They're a hospitality meetings and events technology provider. And Cvent uses 3D programming tools for planners to design events in real time. And advances like this, it can help to save time and amplify brand presence. And again, it serves to differentiate hotels against their competitors. And when real life events are being designed as digital twins, I think it was only a matter of time before entire hotels took to the virtual stage. But before we move into all things metaverse, I do think it is important to note that designers and architects have long relied on such things as digital renderings and computer-generated imagery to help visualize their projects. And you could argue that this might be why hotel groups such as Hotel Amano Covent Garden, which is based in Berlin, well, Hotel Amano Group is based in Berlin, but they've just launched their first UK international outpost in Covent Garden. And when I sat down with their general manager, Simon Gaelic, he mentioned that they actually built and developed this hotel over Zoom. And this instance was a result of circumstance than one of choice, but I think it goes to show how the pandemic has largely accelerated our use of technology in that it is supporting new ways of working. And I think it's the socializing element which is leading to the emergence of these virtual worlds. And several hotel brands have actually announced projects in the metaverse. We've got Levin, which is being opened in Decentraland, and Citizen M is coming to the Sandbox, simply to name a couple. In the bottom left hand of your screen, I recently spoke to Timothy Griffin. He's the principal at Wellbrook Hospitality, which is the company behind Levin. And he said that the group has been working with a real-life architect to help build the digital hotel, and explaining that his reason for doing so was to connect the real Levin experience with the virtual one. What I found so surprising during this interview is that Timothy mentioned that there are planning restrictions in the metaverse, such as air rights. And Timothy mentions that he is limited to building his hotel 3 stories high. And he notes that you have to work within the space that is allocated to you when you buy a plot of land. But you can also add rather quirky elements to your hotel. Timothy mentioned that he's replacing the elevator with a blimp. So there are reasons why hoteliers may want to build a digital twin. You can engage a new demographic. You can convert these visitors into real life customers. You can sell your merchandise, etc. And as interest in digital twins grow, tech providers are also rolling out new products to meet the demands of hospitality and real estate professionals. According to Matterport, JLL was able to transact 85% faster using digital twin technology, and hospitality accommodation properties with a digital twin can increase occupancy by 14%. And last month, Matterport launched a new property intelligence tool to expand the efficiencies of digital twins. And this now includes the ability to predict required staffing levels needed to man and operate specific space or entire buildings. You can assess the condition of real estate portfolios to understand what might need renovating, refurbishing, replacing. You can also visualize the location of furniture and equipment and more. And I think herein lies the real potential value of digital twins, because a recent report from Lodging Econometrics shows that hotel conversions across Europe stand at an all-time high, with hotel renovations also on the rise. And I think that digital twins could be a really viable first step in understanding the optimum performance and commercial success of projects, because we can see hotel rooms, communal spaces, and entire neighborhoods, even cities, could be designed, built, and operated with purpose. There's a company called City Zenith, as an example, which is an urban digital twin platform who is designing sustainable virtual buildings to understand environmental impacts and provide actionable insights. I understand City Zenith is already working with cities in the States, such as New York and Chicago, etc. And these digital twins could benefit hotel owners, operators, developers, and more by supplying them with the tools and data that they need to inform real-world decisions and ultimately increase asset value. And to bring me on to my final trend for today is branded residences. And I'd like to invite Chris to come and join me in conversation. So Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi Eloise, hello all the viewers. My name is Chris Graham. I run a consultancy called Graham Associates, which I set up. I come from the real estate side of the business. My background is strategic marketing. And I sort of fell into real estate when I was headhunted as group marketing director of a company called Hamptons International. So I stuck with the real estate, but I sort of thought overseas looked more interesting. And I've spent most of my career working on luxury resorts and residential developments everywhere from Bali to Barbados. So I've been quite fortunate in that. And I think on the topic today that I've been asked to think about and share some thoughts on, I probably best known for the report that I write, which is on branded residences. It's the most comprehensive report on the topic. And I'm currently thinking about drafting the 5th edition for that. So yeah, that tells you a bit about me.
Well, if anybody would like to download Chris's report, we've popped the link in the chat there if you want to find out further information. But so we can retain your attention right here in the moment, Chris, why do you think the branded residence sector is booming?
Yeah, the sector's proved highly resilient. I mean, really through some extraordinary periods and challenges over the past 2 decades. I think because consistently it offers investment security and premium quality to buyers and high returns to both developers and brands. Those are the 3 component parties. And I think if we look at what's happened more recently over the COVID period, that really sort of highlights why we saw a flight to quality. And branded residents performed so outstandingly during this period. And all of the top agents were reporting higher buyer interest, which, you know, given that nobody could travel and so on, just says a lot about what was going on in consumers' minds during the time. And in fact, Rob Green, who runs a boutique agency called Sphere, actually said, despite the challenges, pandemic-related challenges, inquiries for branded residences rose about 160% over the previous year, with actual sales up around 2/3. And this was at a time when nobody could travel and nobody could actually go and see these things. So coming to your point about, you know, the metaverse, well, I'm not quite there yet, but I think digital tools have certainly played their part. And if we look at the WL Garve, for example, I mean, it was the fastest growing, fastest selling development, I think, in Europe at the time. It sold out pretty much during the pandemic. And at Aston Martin in Miami, the sales director was saying that they had, you know, pretty much had a record year over the previous year, which was out of the COVID pandemic. And there was a report by an organization called Edelman, who's quite well known, called Brands Amidst Crisis. And it attributed the buoyant sales seen at one of the St. Regis developments in the States, specifically during the pandemic, to the value that a brand can add during a crisis. So, you know, that's the proof of the pudding, if you like. But just looking at why is it booming? Well, over this last decade, particularly, we have seen an explosion in the number of brands and participants entering the sector. You can now pretty much, it was traditionally the domain of luxury hotels. It has now expanded beyond automotive to sportswear to publishing, and everybody's jumping in. In fact, even pop stars. So, you know, it's just about any type of property you want. So there is a plethora of choice, many brands, many sectors, much choice. It's further extended, not just vertically, but horizontally in the terms of affordability. As I said, it was typically the domain of the luxury hospitality industry, but it's now come to enter the upper upscale and even the mid-scale. You know, there's a whole bunch of reasons for this. It's something I've been writing about in my reports. But, you know, luxury is relative to each person, and therefore, you know, somebody who's used to 3-star, if they stay in 4-star, then that is you know, great luxury. But there's no reason that you can't have a lot of the benefits that branded residences offer with a lower star rating. And indeed, this is what we're seeing. We're now seeing all of the big brands moving into this zone. It's something I predicted when I was writing my first report a few years ago. So affordability is a key factor, broadening the market. There's also a thing about education. There's a greater awareness about what branded residences are. When I started writing, I mean, people were saying, what are those? Now, you know, 9 out of 10 people actually know what they are. And that helps the, you know, certainly in selling them and marketing them, because you're pushing against a slightly more open door and people actually get what you're talking about. But fundamentally, let's not forget, it's no different from any other sector or any other industry in that it is always demand driven. And people, if they didn't like the idea, they simply would not buy them. So this has to be led by buyers and is demand driven. But the beauty about this sector, and I go back to what I said at the beginning, yes, the buyers pull the market, but the developers and the brands benefit equally and substantially, I might add, which is why I sort of coined the phrase, it's a triple win. It genuinely is a win-win-win situation. All participants have significant benefits by entering the market.
Mm-hmm. Something that you mentioned earlier, Chris, about the number of brands which have entered the market over the last decade. As more companies look to get a slice of the pie, so to speak, how can these brands look to differentiate?
Well, actually, that's been the key theme of my report, and spent quite a long time talking to people much cleverer than me about this. And as competition increases, brands obviously have to differentiate. They often just try and stand out from potential buyers, and some do this more successfully than others. Now, when I started writing I published my first report in 2016. Forbes reported that year that during the previous decade, over 130 new hotel brands had launched, and that getting the word out, as they put it, was becoming more and more difficult. Well, that trend has continued apace and really taken off. And more recently, as I quoted in my report, Top Hotel News put out a paper on this, and they said, with so many soft and hard brands associated with the biggest hotel names these days, it can often be impossible to distinguish one from the other. Now, I observed that since this is aimed at seasoned industry practitioners, because that is a business to business side, how easy can it be for consumers to differentiate between the plethora of luxury hotel brands or just hotel brands in the market? So, you know, if we don't know, how on earth can the consumers know? Yes, there are ways of differentiating, whether it's architecture, it could be, you know, you focus on wellness, you focus on F&B, whatever. Those are all, if you like, more the physical elements of it. But an obvious starting point is location. You know, what sort of brand do you want to be? Do you want to be urban? Do you want to be beach resort? Do you want to be mountain? Do you want to be rural retreat? So, you know, that can help to define your brand. Do you repurpose old buildings or look for cutting edge architecture? These are the kind of things that are obvious points of differentiation. But a key point, an obvious starting point, if you like, is location. And location really defines, in a sense, what it is, as I said. And a friend of mine, Daniel von Barlow, at Accor, Vice President of Development at Accor, actually observed with real estate, value cannot be sustainably conferred by a hotel or designer name alone. The location itself will ultimately be the most important factor. And absolutely would agree with that. But I think we've moved away from the physical to the experiential, to the emotional. It's gone from the touchy to the, to the feely, if you like. And the extensive research has confirmed that it's now about the lifestyle experience. We've heard some of my co-panelists mention this today. It's about the experience that is offered, and that is seen as an increasingly important factor in brand differentiation. And in fact, Jeff Tisdall and James Price, both of whom are very, very experienced, head of Accor development, head of Four Seasons development, they both cite this as a primary factor with regard to their own brand offerings. In fact, one of the Four Seasons vice presidents actually said quite eloquently, luxury real estate isn't about finishes and appliances. It's not really even about buying real estate. It's about buying a lifestyle and experiences. And that kind of summarized, I read that the other day, and I thought that kind of summarizes quite nicely what that's all about. But you might argue that most brands are going to say that it's all about their experiences and they're different. Well, yeah, but there's a very clever guy called Frank Schützendorf at the Lausanne School of Hotel School, and he actually agrees with this, and he says, brands are being forced to provide exciting new customer experiences. And I love that, being forced. It's like they don't want to do it, but they're having to do it because the market's moved in that direction. So that is certainly true, the lifestyle experience. But the flip side of that is Skift put out a report called Building Brand Love and Loyalty in Luxury Hospitality. And they observed that there is a diminishing competitive advantage for hospitality brands to trumpet themselves as experiences when so many brands are saying the same thing. And this comes back to my point about differentiation and so on. And there's another colleague who is one of the leaders in the field called Piers Schmidt, works in luxury branding. He's worked on numerous of the top brands that you see across the world, and he is probably one of the leading experts on this. I'm very happy to say he's writing a chapter for my next report. And he looked at this. He actually conducted a study, and he looked at over 80 brands, hotel brands, not in the luxury sector, but broadly. And he found that in many cases, they all use the same words, just in a different order, to describe what is their mission statement, what do they stand for. And he called this buzzword bingo, which again is quite right. It comes back to this ability to communicate who you are and what you stand for to your customers, because a brand says a lot about the person who's buying it. It offers a distinct identity, positioning, and a lifestyle with which that individual willingly associates. So a brand must reflect the target demographic, profile, and lifestyle that it wants, and the investment aspirations of the customers that it's looking to attract. And just because a brand is well established in one market or one region does not mean it's going to enjoy the same success in other regions. And I give you an example. There's a very popular brand in the Far East called Hello Kitty, which is a cartoon character. Well, they've now launched into branded residential, which is quite an interesting departure. But I can't really see that taking off in central London. So a brand either resonates with a particular audience or it doesn't. And Muriel Murden, who was chairman at WATG and probably one of the pioneers of the branded residential sector, She actually wrote the foreword for my previous report, and she said, to stand out from the crowd, brand differentiation tactics and strategies need to be employed that have strong buyer resonance. We see this as the most vital challenge for the sector going forward. So everybody, is basically saying the same thing. It's just how well people are doing it. But if a brand or a hotel is not effectively differentiated, it risks being seen as a Me Too product. And it's principally the buyer who has to understand the specific attributes that apply to the brand to really appreciate the added value benefits it promises that are going to enhance his or her lifestyle and investment aspirations. That's what it boils down to. It comes to the communications, how effectively you communicate this. And if you lack the in-house marketing expertise, I strongly recommend that you seek professional advice, because if you don't get it out, it really takes quite a lot to relaunch it. So you need to make sure that your messaging and your communications are absolutely bulletproof when you launch. But, I run a marketing consultancy. I would say that, wouldn't I?
Chris, I have one final question for you before we must wrap up today. And it's going back to your location point that you made earlier. Why hasn't there been many branded resi developments in cities like London and Paris? And where do you see these opportunities?
That's something, again, I looked at, because when I started writing, there were very few. There was only a handful in London. There are a few more now, and it's been catching on. But Savills did some quite good research looking at global brand premiums, the premium in the price when you're selling residences as to what they are. And in emerging markets, an average global premium of branded versus unbranded stock was 54%. For resorts, it was 32%, and major cities, 24%. So you can see already cities comes at the lower end, but that's globally. So if you take somewhere like Sao Paulo and stuff, it probably distorts that percentage, because in an earlier study they found that the premium in London, for example, was less than 10% practice. Now, when I was looking into this and interviewing quite a number of people about it, it was evident that lower price premiums are prevalent in mature luxury markets where there is a lot of comparable unbranded stock that is also very high quality. And due to a combination of already very high prices for premium real estate combined with strong buyer demand, there was really left little room or requirement to pay a premium for a third-party brand to come on top, because if you built it, it was pretty much going to sell anyway. So why did you need to do this? So that was pretty much the reason that I sort of conclusion as to why it hadn't happened. But as competition has got more intense, of course, the situation has changed. There's also the issue of availability of prime locations in prime central urban locations. As you can imagine, to put residences next to a hotel, you've got, it's kind of hard to find that sort of space, and maybe you can repurpose buildings, which is what we're seeing in some cities happening now. And principally, standalone units are now on the rise. Again, something I predicted in earlier reports. That is now very much a growing trend. So it's just residences managed by a brand, but not next to the hotel, if you see. And over the past 2 years, on your point about London, yes, we saw a huge surge in branded developments, all at the prime end of the market. And I spoke to Dominic Grace, who was the former head of London residential developments at Savills, and he said, yeah, it's specifically down to the rise in demand for personalised services. Is wealthy buyers want 5-star services that they can get from established hospitality brand, and they are prepared to pay for it. Secondly, it appealed very much to international buyers. London is a great destination. People see it as a safe haven. They invest here. And the branded residential, they just like the idea of the convenience, if you like, and the benefits of the brand association and the benefits it delivered. And he basically just said, look, it's a proven way of adding value and differentiating a residential development, which again squares the circle on our conversation. One thing I did look at was Australia, because Australia, and I know it's not London, but it's a vast market, and it's a very sophisticated real estate market. But if you look, there are only a handful of branded residences in that country. And I went down there and I actually looked at that market. It's much the same situation in that you don't need a brand, because the unbranded developments are of such high quality and offer all the same amenities, the concierge, all of the benefits that you would get with a branded development, that they just haven't seen any need to do so. But the market there's got tighter as well, and now we're starting to see more branded residential developments coming on. And just to wrap up, and to your point about where are the opportunities, well, I'd say that brands can be used to elevate real estate in secondary locations, such as in London, we saw the Versace building, in Vauxhall, the Vauxhall regeneration area. It can, help to elevate an area. I think, as I've touched on before, we're going to see more upper upscale and mid-range brands coming in. It doesn't all have to be at the high end. We're going to start seeing 4-star brands opening, I would imagine. I would say there's a great opportunity for this whole live, work, play environment as well. We saw there was a massive exodus from the city during COVID, and a lot of people sold up and moved out or got rid of their leases and stuff. Well, a lot of them are getting cold turkey now, and some of them want to get back because they've got to work in London, but they don't want to give up the country life, and they can't afford to have another property. So a pied-à-terre of some description in town that provides all of the convenience of this live, work, play environment, I think offers great potential, and we're certainly seeing growth in that sector as well. And then finally, I think the rise of standalone, I've touched on this a moment ago, the repurposing of office buildings. We're seeing with this exodus, the work from home has completely changed the office market. So we've got buildings that can't be filled because they're all downsizing and going to some hybrid working. Well, all of those buildings can be repurposed subject to planning. And we look at Centrepoint as an example, where they built luxury residences on top, and they are going to be changing that. And that again is another opportunity. But anyway, thank you for your time. I realize I've gone over, so thank you so much for listening to me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I'll take this opportunity to flag to our audience that all the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers today have been popped into the chat. And what we're going to do is leave this webinar open for an extra 2 minutes right at the end for you to follow up on any of those links so you can carry on that conversation. I just have a few closing slides to run through before we wrap up today. We're already planning 2023 webinars, and you can see on your screens now 6 topics that's going to be kickstarting from the 16th of January and running all the way through to June. So it would be great if you could sign up to those that you find interesting, and I'll certainly love to see you there when we come back in January. And mid-January, late January, we're going to be in Recharge. Well, Recharge is an event that we host every year in a different European location. And this time we're heading to Lisbon. And you can see on your screens some of the sponsors of our event. And if you would like to hear further information about Recharge, you can follow up on the links that have been popped into the chat, or you can get in touch with my colleague, Katie. Her details are up here on your screens. I'm sure she would love to hear from you, be that any information about our in-person events, but also our digital activity too. And all that's left for me to say is thank you. Thank you to Tara. Thank you to Chris. Thank you to Adir for sharing their time and insights with us today. As this is our last webinar before the Christmas holidays, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Enjoy the festivities, and I will see you all back here on the 16th of January. Thank you and take care.